The studio lights hum their familiar electric lully. It's 1987, a Thursday night in Burbank, and Studio One at NBC glows with that particular warmth only old television cameras can capture. Gold and amber like memory itself. The rainbow curtain hangs in its iconic arc. The band sits ready. The audience settles into their seats expecting what they always expect. Johnny Carson walking through that curtain with a golf swing and that sideways smile that says everything and nothing at once. But tonight, the curtain parts differently. Johnny walks out holding something. A small box wrapped in paper that's already creasing in his grip. He doesn't wave. Doesn't acknowledge Doc Severson's raised eyebrow or the audience's confused applause. He just walks to his desk, sits down, and places the box in front of him like it might shatter. Ed McMahon shifts in his chair. Johnny. No response. Just Johnny staring at that box. The audience goes quiet. Not the quiet of anticipation, the quiet of concern. Because in 30 years of late-night television, they've never seen this. Johnny Carson doesn't do vulnerable. Johnny Carson does wit and distance and perfectly timed reactions to absurdity. Johnny Carson is the man who interviews crying guests without crying himself. Who laughs at chaos without ever being chaotic. Tonight. His hands are shaking. I need to tell you about someone, he finally says, voice barely above a whisper. The cameras zoom in slowly, cautiously, like they're afraid of what they'll find. Johnny Carson wasn't supposed to be Johnny Carson. He was supposed to be a Nebraska kid who did magic tricks at church socials and maybe sold insurance like his father. Norfolk, Nebraska doesn't produce television icons. It produces farmers and school teachers and people who know how to fix a carburetor in January snow. But Johnny had something else. A hunger for disappearance. Not the kind that makes you run away, but the kind that makes you hide inside a character, inside a performance, inside the safety of making others laugh while revealing nothing of yourself. The Navy taught him discipline. Radio taught him timing. Game shows taught him how to fill dead air with charm. And The Tonight Show, that became his fortress. Every weeknight at 11:30, Johnny Carson appeared in America's living rooms, bedrooms, dorm rooms, hospital rooms. He was the last voice before sleep. The companion to insomniacs and night shift workers and lonely hearts who needed to hear laughter before facing tomorrow. 60 million people watched him. 60 million people thought they knew him. But Johnny had 3 ex-wives who'd say otherwise. He had sons who called him distant in interviews they thought he'd never read. He had friends who loved him and couldn't get past the wall. I'm a performer, he once told an interviewer. What you see on that show is a performance. Don't confuse it with intimacy. Yet somehow through the screen, people felt intimacy anyway. They felt like Johnny was their friend. Like if they met him at a grocery store, he'd remember them, crack a joke, make them feel seen. Among those 60 million was a little girl named Amy. She was 8 years old in 1985, living in a suburb of Cleveland, Ohio. Leukemia, the kind that steals childhood one treatment at a time. The hair, the energy, the certainty that tomorrow exists. Most nights Amy couldn't sleep. Pain kept her up, or nausea, or the peculiar loneliness of being 10 years old and knowing words like remission and prognosis. But at 11:30, Johnny came on. And for 90 minutes, Amy could forget. She'd watch him do Karnak the Magnificent, holding those sealed envelopes to his turban, delivering answers before questions with that perfect deadpan timing. She'd laugh at Aunt Blabby had stumped the band at the way Johnny could turn a flubbed line into something funnier than the scripted joke. He makes everything okay, she told her mother one night. Both of them squeezed into the hospital bed, the TV flickering blue against white walls. Her mother smoothed what was left of Amy's hair. You should write to him. He won't read it. He's famous. Write it anyway. The first letter arrived at NBC in March 1985. Forwarded to Johnny's desk by a production assistant who thought it might be special. Notebook paper. Purple ink. Stickers of unicorns in the margins. Dear Mr. Carson, my name is Amy and I am 8 years old. I have leukemia, which is a kind of cancer. I watch your show every night from the hospital. You make me laugh even when everything hurts. Thank you for being my friend even though you don't know me. Love, Amy. P.S. Why did the Scarecrow win an award? Because he was outstanding in his field. Get it? Johnny read it between rehearsals, standing in the hallway outside his dressing room. He read it twice. Then he folded it carefully and put it in his jacket pocket. You going to respond? His assistant asked. Yeah, Johnny said quietly. Yeah, I think I will. The letters kept coming. Every few weeks, a new one. Amy told him about her treatments, about the hospital clown who wasn't as funny as Johnny, about her dream of being a comedian someday. She sent him jokes. Terrible, wonderful kid jokes that made the entire writing staff groan and smile. What do you call a bear with no teeth? A gummy bear. Why don't scientists trust atoms? Because they make up everything. Johnny started writing back. Not through publicists or form letters, actual responses handwritten on his personal stationery. He never told anyone. Not Ed, not Doc, not even his producers. Dear Amy, he wrote in June 1986. Your joke about the gummy bear made me laugh so hard I almost spit out my coffee. You've got better timing than half my writers. Keep sending them and keep fighting. You're the bravest person I know. Your friend, Johnny. The staff started noticing changes. Johnny would pause during rehearsals, stare into the middle distance. You okay? Ed would ask. Fine, just thinking. But he wasn't fine. He was thinking about a little girl in Cleveland who watched his show from a hospital bed, who found refuge in his performance, who gave him something he'd spent 60 years avoiding. Genuine, uncomplicated love. Amy never asked for anything. Not an autograph. Not a visit. Not a phone call. She just wanted to make him laugh. The way he made her laugh. It was the purest thing Johnny had ever experienced. December 1986. The package arrived. During a production meeting, Johnny's secretary brought it in. Uncertain. This came from Cleveland. There's you should read the note. Johnny opened it in his dressing room. Door closed. Inside a wooden box, maybe 6 in square, hand-painted by someone whose hands clearly shook while they worked. Gold stars scattered across a midnight blue background. A crooked moon. Words painted in silver. For Johnny, keep your magic here. Inside the box, a letter. Amy's handwriting messier than before, but unmistakably hers. Dear Johnny, the doctors say I don't have much time left. I'm not scared, but I'm sad I won't get to see you on TV anymore. I made you this box to keep special things in. I painted stars because you once said you used to look at stars in Nebraska when you were a kid. Thank you for being my friend. Thank you for making me laugh when nothing else could. I'll watch your show from heaven and still laugh at Karak. You're the best comedian in the world. Don't be sad. Okay. I got to laugh. That's all anybody really needs. Love always. Amy. Tucked beneath the letter was a hand-drawn card. Crayon on construction paper. 2 figures at Johnny's desk, one labeled Johnny, the other labeled Amy, sitting in Ed's chair. A speech bubble. Your co-host in the stars. A second note, different handwriting. Amy's mother. Dear Mr. Carson, Amy passed away on November 28th. She spent her final week painting this box for you. She made us promise to send it. She said you'd understand. Thank you for the letters. You gave her joy when we couldn't. You gave her a reason to laugh. That's everything. With gratitude, the Henderson family. Johnny sat on his dressing room couch holding a dead child's final gift and something inside him. Something carefully constructed over decades of performance and distance, cracked clean through the taping that night, became legend. Everyone who was there remembers it differently, but they all remember the silence. Johnny walked onto the set carrying the wooden box. No monologue, no jokes about the day's news, just Johnny sitting at his desk, staring at the camera like he was looking for permission. I need to tell you about my friend Amy, he began, and his voice broke on her name. The audience shifted. This wasn't part of the show. Johnny lifted the box, hands trembling. She was 10 years old. She had leukemia. She watched this show every single night from her hospital bed. And she wrote to me. Ed leaned forward, eyes already wet. Johnny, she sent me jokes, Johnny continued, ignoring him. Terrible jokes. The kind that make you groan and laugh at the same time. She wanted to be a comedian. She wanted to sit in that chair and make people laugh like I do. He opened the box, pulled out Amy's drawing, held it up for the camera. This is us. She drew this before she died. She called herself my co-host in the stars. The studio was silent except for the hum of cameras and the quiet sound of Johnny Carson crying on national television. She was 10 years old, he whispered. And she taught me more about courage, about grace, about what actually matters than I've learned in 60 years of living. A tear dropped onto the desk, then another. Johnny didn't wipe them away, didn't apologize, didn't deflect with humor or change the subject. He just sat there holding a child's love letter, letting himself break. Ed reached over, gripped Johnny's shoulder. Doc's son looked away, jaw tight. The audience, these people who came for laughs, sat frozen, witnessing something television wasn't supposed to show. Vulnerability, grief, a man stripped of performance. "I'm sorry," Johnny finally said, voice shaking. "I'm sorry. The audience stood, not scattered applause, but a wave of it rising like a tide. They stood and clapped and cried with him. For him, because in that moment Johnny Carson stopped being an icon and became simply human. The cameras kept rolling. The director didn't cut away because this was real. After 5 minutes, Johnny composed himself enough to continue. "She told me not to be sad," he said, almost smiling through tears. "She said she'd watch from heaven and still laugh at Karak." He looked directly into the camera. "Amy, if you're up there, and I believe you are, thank you. Thank you for reminding me what this is all for." The show that night was different. Quieter. Gentler. Johnny interviewed his guests with a softness they'd never seen. Asked them about their children, about what makes them laugh, about what matters when everything else falls away. And on his desk through every segment, sat a small wooden box painted with stars. Nobody outside the show knew what changed in Johnny Carson. After that night, the public still saw the polished performer, the master of late night, the man who kept his distance, but those close to him saw something different. The wooden box traveled home with him that night to Malibu. He placed it on his desk, not in his office, but in his bedroom beside photographs of his sons, his parents, his life before fame. Every morning he saw it first thing. Every night it was the last thing before sleep. He started calling his sons more. Awkward conversations at first. Decades of distance impossible to erase in a few phone calls, but he tried. He asked about their lives, their children, their dreams. He apologized for things left unsaid. "What brought this on?" his oldest son asked during one call. "I learned something recently," Johnny said. "About time. About not wasting it on walls." The fan mail changed, too. Johnny began personally reading letters from sick children. Something he'd always delegated. He'd respond to them himself late at night, his handwriting getting messier as he aged, but his words getting clearer. When he retired in 1992, his final Tonight Show ended with a story few understood. "I've learned," he said, looking into the camera with those blue eyes that had seen 3 decades of late night, "that the best moments aren't the biggest laughs. They're the smallest connections. The kid who writes you a letter. The stranger who tells you that you helped them through a dark night. That's the real magic." After his retirement, Johnny became even more private. But those who knew him noticed the charity work he did quietly funding children's cancer wards, always anonymously, always stipulating the donations remained secret until after his death. In 1998, a children's wing opened at a hospital in Nebraska. The plaque read, "For the dreamers who remind us why we laugh." Nobody knew Johnny paid for it until his estate released the information in 2005. After he died, the wooden box sat on his bedside table until the very end. His last nurse mentioned it in an interview years later. "He'd hold it sometimes," she said. "Just hold it and smile like he was remembering something beautiful." There's a misconception about magic that it's about illusion, about hiding the truth behind misdirection. Johnny Carson knew magic. He performed it as a kid in Nebraska, pulling rabbits from hats, making cards disappear. But real magic, the kind that changes you, doesn't hide truth, it reveals it. Amy's gift revealed something Johnny had spent his entire life avoiding. That letting yourself be moved, letting yourself care without armor, letting yourself break, that's not weakness. That's the only way to be fully human. Johnny built a career on performance, on showing America a version of himself that was charming and safe and distant. He made millions laugh while revealing almost nothing. He was the master of the wall, the king of deflection. And then a 10-year-old girl with leukemia sent him terrible jokes and asked for nothing and loved him without condition. And the wall came down. She never got to be his co-host in life. But she became his teacher in something more important. How to let love in even when it comes with unbearable pain. How to be vulnerable even when everything in you screams to protect yourself. How to measure success not by laughs or ratings or legacy, but by the small sacred connections that change who you are. In the end, that wooden box with its crooked stars meant more than 30 years of Emmy Awards. That hand-drawn card of two people at a desk meant more than every famous interview, every viral moment, every time Johnny made the nation laugh because Amy saw him. Not Johnny Carson, the performer. Not the icon, just Johnny. A man who needed to know that making one sick child laugh mattered more than making millions laugh without meaning. The greatest magic isn't making people laugh while hiding yourself. It's letting them see you cry and discovering they love you more for it. Johnny Carson died in 2005. Quietly, privately, the way he lived most of his life outside the spotlight. But in his final days, that small wooden box stayed within reach. A reminder, a gift, a piece of magic that never faded. Some stars, it turns out, shine brightest after they've fallen in some love. Given freely by a child who knew she was dying, can crack open even the most defended heart and teach it finally how to be whole. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to remember what truly matters. Sometimes the smallest voices teach the loudest lessons. Sometimes the bravest hearts beat in the smallest chests. And sometimes a gift wrapped in construction paper and painted with shaking hands can change everything. Like, subscribe, and remember, the magic we leave behind isn't in our performances. It's in the hearts we touch when we finally let ourselves be real.